Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on planet Earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking a greater possibility in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. Listen to their stories, hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's Her Conversations is Ashmi Pathela. She is an artist and author who left her career in Silicon Valley to follow her heart. During her travels, she experienced a spiritual awakening that led her to questioning everything about her reality. She was shocked to find that millions of others were going through the same. Her book, Awakening the Heart of Humanity, is a tribute to this unprecedented time of global awakening. She writes and supports others on the ascension journey with her. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel your most her?
Wow, I love that question. I actually feel it right now. And you would think higher energy would mean like bubbly, but for me, it's actually way more calm and grounded and centered. My heart feels open. I feel like there's nowhere else to be and nothing to do but to be here now. And I think it's because of the presence, like my intention to tune into the present moment, whether I'm walking in nature or painting, it allows me to come back to my true nature. So yeah, I'm definitely feeling it now.
Perfect. Well, you're in the right space to have that feeling. And one thing I didn't realize about when I created that question was that it kind of got people to kind of focus in a place and kind of like, you know, just sit in a certain space while they were talking about it. And then it just opens the conversation up to go in a certain way, then just kind of landing with, okay, what's your name? Tell me what you do. you know?
Yeah, I love it.
It kind of just like gets you to like, yeah, what does it feel like when I'm there? So thank you for answering that. So the second question is, what do you do?
Good place to start.
Yeah. Just tell me about your story, because obviously the way that I found you was I don't know if someone else shared them, but I just was watching the quotes that you were sharing from your book, and I just thought, my goodness, like every single word is just absolutely what is happening now and what needs to be said, and sometimes, you know, just with a little kind of more clear edge. Talk about your story and where you came from and how you got to the point of awakening and then to creating work.
Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. So I always felt like I was here for a reason. You know, there's a sense of purpose or finding my meaning in life that I've always had from a child. But I kept searching and searching and yearning, and I never felt like I could really reach it. But I was always yearning for something bigger or greater, something that was out of this world. And I chased that in my younger student and career years through achievement. So I was really pouring myself into my career in Silicon Valley. That's where I used to live. I worked at Facebook and a few smaller tech companies since then, and chasing the corporate ladder and trying to prove myself. And I feel like after spending many years in that cycle of total workaholism, I completely burnt out. And in 2017, I quit my job after the company imploded. The people managing me were also burnt out. Some had chronic fatigue. And I was looking at that career ladder thinking, this is not what I want anymore. This isn't going the direction I want to go. So I quit my job and traveled the world. And through that time, I began unplugging from the matrix, or letting go of my old ways of being and questioning what is really important to me in my life. So that was a huge journey, and everything accelerated. Even though there were seeds planted earlier, I feel like I was catapulted into a dark night of the soul. Woke up to the truths of the world, which some of them were so shocking. I couldn't sleep at night. I was going through so much research. I was just shocking my brain open. And on one level, it felt completely crazy. Like, am I going insane? But on another level, everything finally made sense. It was an intuitive knowing, like, this is true. And there's so much more I want to learn. And coming from a more analytical background as I was then, I read a lot of books, went through so many rabbit holes on YouTube, and finally began actually seeing the changes in my own consciousness, manifesting faster, synchronicities happening left and right. And I landed in Bali. And that really helped me, because the month prior I was in Thailand, and that's where my dark night of the soul happened. But in Bali, everything opened up for me. There's so much magic. I could see the power of my ability to create. And I was just playing with, that more beautiful light side of awakening, which is realizing your own power and magic within. So that was 3 years ago.
Beautiful. I'm trying to think if we were in Bali at the same time, because I was there as well from, let me get the years right, 20, where are we now, 21? No, actually. So if you went traveling 17, so at the beginning of 17, I went to India for a month. And then I was in Bali up until 2 years ago. So that would be 19. So end of 18, 19.
Okay, yeah. I must have just missed you, because I lived there for a year.
Oh, right.
And then moved to Australia. Yeah.
Good for you. And do you think, are you kind of staying in Australia now, or are you moving through? Are you still traveling? How are you working?
Yeah, I found love in Bali. My partner Joel is from Perth. And so I ended up, after we were long distance for a bit, moving to Perth. So been here for 2.5 years, I think. 2.5 years. And we're living in Denmark, which is a little beautiful town by the water and forests in Western Australia.
Beautiful. What a gorgeous story.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, good for you. And a couple of questions I want to ask. The first one is, can you think, or is there anything that pops out in your mind as that final straw? Because awakening is a series of events, but is there one thing that you think was just like the ding, the light bulb moment, one event, external event, or some dot that connected for you that kind of sprung you out of the, oh my gosh?
Interesting question. I feel like there's so many layers to awakening. Like, for me, I see it as awakening to the outer world, so the truth of the outer world and all the hidden corruption and all of that, and the true story of Earth. But also the inner awakening was much more profound for me. So as much as my brain was blown by the outer awakening, the biggest moment where all doubt was erased, where I felt cellularly changed, was when my partner and I, last August, were just going through all these shifts in our life. He quit his job. We were learning more and more about the outer world, letting go of our doubt, taking huge leaps of faith. There was this 10-day period where we entered what I would say is the fifth dimension, or a state of pure being. And it was like we took a drug. So we were both in it at the same time. And it suddenly started coming around 9 or 10 p.m. And I was like, are you feeling this? And he's like, are you feeling this? It's like, what's happening? And for a second, we thought they turned on the Tesla towers and were beaming like 432 hertz on the earth, because that's how calm we felt.
Yeah.
And it was a sense of this awakening is happening for sure. And we can feel what it will feel like the sense of no fear and no more worries of the past, no more worries of your future. The triggers were fading. We had so much energy. We didn't need as much sleep, and we woke up feeling so clear and fresh as if we didn't even sleep. So it was a whole new way of being. The whole week, there's so many synchronicities happened. And that was when I really felt like the world's going to change. Because if people could feel this,
Right.
you're going to change your whole life in a second. Because it's like a different vibration. Yeah.
That is like so 100% and so interesting that you said that. Simply because, and I'll tell you in as short a time as possible. I used to do a lot of work in kind of the events industry, and so it's busy, it's 3D, it's manic, it's sales, you know. And then of course over the past year, that whole industry has literally just fallen over, completely collapsed. There were only 2 events last year that we were able to do that weren't cancelled last minute due to kind of a shift in regulations and all this kind of stuff. And both of those events were a disaster for me. Anyway, both of the times that I went, the transport that I was with broke down, or there was always something that would happen that just made it not smooth. And then again, last week, there was an attempt to kind of go back into that scene and try it. And I had to reach out to so many friends and just say, you know, because I kind of told them, listen, I'm going to go back into the matrix. I'm going to try and make some money. So there's part of me that's not quite believing something. So I go back in, and it was the longest, most energetically exhausting 5 days. And I was barely able to kind of keep on top of the other things that I do outside of that, because this energy was so draining. Because one, it was in a space where the majority of the people are being led by the narrative that is kind of like holding that side of society together right now. And that narrative is based on fear and shame and guilt and all of these things. Then within that, people are just kind of, I was just watching people project, because it was a lot of people I hadn't seen for at least 2 years in that. So they're just seeing me again 2 years later, assuming I'm the same. I know that I've been through a load of stuff in there, a completely different person, but I've gone back into this old situation. Then people are meeting me as they remember me, and I'm not that person. And initially you try and play that game, and then you're like, but I'm not that. I'm not that. So I'm not going to do that anymore. And I pulled all the way back and just watched everything play out. And it was almost like visually watching people throw their projections out, try and win in a situation, try and be right, try not to be scared, being triggered by what other people say, misunderstanding what people were saying, being in fear, trying to work out what people say. It was just a mess, but it was really interesting to observe. And then coming away from that, and then also seeing what it brought up for me, and how I took time to just sit down and went, what was that? Coming back and really just going over it. And then last night, as I told you, I collaborate with the Great Awakening Report. And last night I was sitting and I was talking to 2 of my colleagues, and just going over the whole week and what was happening and the space that we were in and the conversation that we were in. And we were on a Zoom call, and we didn't even have the video on, and we were just having just a conversation about what we're seeing, what we're feeling, the work that we're doing, just all sorts of things, but from a completely different point of view. And one of the things that one of the guys said was like, guys, how does this feel? This is what 5D feels like. And then we were trying to, you don't ever want to over explain something, because you want it to have that magic and that mystery, but also we wanted to kind of acknowledge it within each other and maybe put some words around it so that we could kind of communicate to each other what we were experiencing individually. And it was, for me, the words that came was, it's just so easy. I feel seen. I don't have to show you anything. I don't have to kind of like over exaggerate anything. I'm just telling you what happened to me, good and bad, talking about my experiences. There's no judgment. It's very present. It's very easy. I feel very expansive. There's all of these words. And it's just interesting that you're talking about fifth dimensional experience, because so much of us are moving towards that and trying to work out what that feels like. So I totally hear you on that, as having come from a really dense experience and then going into a very light experience. We were on the call for like 7 hours, and I only realized that because I looked at my time and went, oh, okay, I went on this call at 5, it's midnight, because it didn't feel like 7 hours.
Yeah.
You know, if I was in 3D doing 7 hours work, you know,
you'd be so drained.
Dot. Just whatever that was. And relating that back to, have you ever reconnected for one reason or another to the experiences, the people or the situations or the groups that you were with when you worked in Silicon Valley? You know, just as a contrast, or have you ever kind of met somebody that you used to work with, and how was that?
It's interesting because as you shift, those people from your past kind of just fall away naturally. I like to think that I keep the friends who have always been there for me from my childhood and, you know, other years. But those are just more like soul friendships where we connect at the heart. It doesn't matter what our beliefs are or differences in our mental beliefs, right? But there's a heart connection. But I've noticed that everyone who I was just connected with egoically or from the mind has all slipped away. I know some of them are still connected on social media and all, but it's just there's a sense of we're in different worlds and there's no judgment. They're on their path. But I also have this feeling of like when the time comes, when the whole world awakens, many of those people are going to be the ones who need the most guidance and the most support, and they're going to feel so confused. And I felt the same way myself because I was so embedded in the Silicon Valley masculine mindset of hustling and doing and living in the mind. So once you wake up, it's like the rug is pulled from under your feet. And I do have a sense of knowing that some of them are going to come back and it will be in perfect timing. Yeah. But it's very strange to, when you talk about your old self and not feeling like that person again, I can feel the difference. Lately, I've really noticed it. It feels like I remember who I used to be. So I remember how I used to think and the worries I used to have. But when I try to tune into those worries and feel them, I can't. So it's like they feel more like echoes or memories, but I can't tune into the same, things that used to bother me so much, or, you know, even just around abundance. Like I used to have the deepest scarcity mindset, probably from childhood, but always worrying that there's not enough, or always thinking about how can I do more, or how can I even just hustle and achieve more. But now it's not like my circumstances have really changed, but through living abundantly, through feeling abundant, through shifting my own consciousness and healing those scarcity programs, I've attracted so much abundance with no effort. And it's just like a totally different way of living. So it's strange to kind of mourn your old self and also step into creating your new way of being when there are fewer people around you who are actually believing it and living it. So we are really creating the fifth dimension or the new earth before we can see it. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, because the reason that I went into that situation was, I don't think I went in there with scarcity. It was just like, this is a good thing to do. This is an opportunity. I know how to do this. It will just be, it's a short period of time of going in and going out. But it really showed me the level that I've expanded and grown to. And I sent messages to friends as well, just speaking to them, because I was like just watching where they were, just remembering that this is not my constant reality. These are not the conversations and the energies I need to be around in order to communicate with people. I know stronger, more directed and aware and awake people than I was surrounded by. So, I had to remind all these things. And I sent messages out going, I just want to let you know that we spend so much time thinking that we're not doing enough, that we're not healing enough, that we're, all of the things that we're working on. And I just want to let you know that we're doing way better than we realize, because there are some people who are not even aware and have not even started on the stuff that we're doing. And we just need to kind of give ourselves way more credit for what we have achieved and for what we can see and what we're aware of and what we're doing in the world. Because I'm sure, everyone who's stepped into this way of life and this path experiences all of the negativity from people projecting back at you for changing, for seeing the world different, for, the boring one being a conspiracy theorist. But, that one is a tired line now. One, because it was created to stop people looking, but also because everything that was and has been labeled a conspiracy is just like turning into absolute fact in weeks now. It's not even taken years, and then it was months, and now it's literally accelerating. You say one thing and there it is. You can't deny it.
Can't see it. They see it, or maybe they're afraid to see it and admit to themselves like this is actually happening.
What do you think with regards to that? Because it is my belief that everyone has eyes and has a heart and has a soul, whether they choose to connect to it or not. And I'm sure we both know that we've been in a situation where that little voice is telling you something, your intuition is prodding you, and you're just not paying attention. And then, enough times happen where you realize it's cost you time, money, pain in some way, that actually maybe you should listen to that. And I don't think we're unique in having these things. And I truly, truly believe that every soul on the planet is having some sort of awareness of something that's going on and is just not tuning into it. And the noise of the truth and the noise of the awakening and the is just getting louder and louder, in terms of you can't deny it. Things aren't making sense anymore. Things are actually really ridiculous. If you come away from it and then you look at the mainstream media, or in particular the push that they're doing for this jab, it's getting so comical now. It's not even like you've got a doctor coming on, or someone who's dressed in a white coat trying to give you all the reasons why you should go down this line. You've got celebrities and musical theatre stars and like skits, and like, come on now.
And they're bribing you with burgers and donuts
and lottery tickets and lap dances. Please now, come on. What
surely you can see it, but I totally agree. I think everyone has that intuitive voice, or the voice of the soul. They know at some level something's off, but the programming has been so deep, they have no idea that the media is corrupt, and the government, and some of the experts in big pharma that they fund. And it's such a deeply woven web that they're so deeply entrenched in it, and they've been swallowing the opposite narrative, the programming, for years, that I think their brain overrides what their intuition is telling them. And I'm sure you've heard of cognitive dissonance, but it really is scary to open your mind to thinking that the world is not what you think. And even admitting that would mean you're denying your own identity and everything you've believed and who you were and what you stand up for. And, if you've been ridiculing your friends who are conspiracy theorists, or just pointing the finger, then you want to dig your heels even deeper into your side. And it just becomes a mental battle of who's right. But the truth is in your heart, and it's in your intuition. And if you just are willing to open your mind and be wrong, or be proved believe something that's opposite of what you believe, you will start seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, that I can see in some aspects it is the wanting to be right. It's what not wanting to then be on the side of the people that you've spent so long ridiculing and calling names, but also that ego that you've built up around who you are and what you stand for and what your job means, and all of the things, all of these structures that actually don't mean anything whatsoever at all, and watching that crumble. But then also realizing that you've been lied to and you've built your entire world on a lie. That takes we all have to go through that, but it just depends on how you want to frame it. You can either, you know, live in shame and be angry, and we all have levels of anger, but then I find it as an amazing opportunity to erase all that you'd built yourself on. If you'd built yourself on something really shaky and a lie and deception, and like you say, the deeper you start to really dig and see where this all really goes to, or at least to an extent where it goes to, because I don't know the root of it at all. You know, I think it might actually, you find out where the root of it is, let's say on Earth. Who knows what else is involved, what other energies, what other entities are involved. I believe it's wider than that. You know, whatever that looks like, because that in itself has got a big old question mark on it. It's like how big and how wide it is, and just to keep hanging on to what you've believed and what you've believed of all these external figures and what they can do for you is, you know, holding onto a branch when the tree's already fallen down, and then being afraid of that abyss that you need to fall into, that, you know, that dark night of the soul that you spoke about, can be a very frightening experience, and feel like you're having some kind of, like, well, you are having a mental breakdown, because like internally you're breaking down, and external doesn't make any sense. How did you kind of navigate your way through your experience of the dark night of the soul?
I was very alone because I had no friends who understood what I was talking about, and I'd never heard about any of this stuff. I had no idea what a real awakening or ascension was, or had no idea aliens exist, or even that was a shock. So the way I did it was I just went really, really deep into my own research, and my brain had to understand. I was just, once you open the door, you're like, okay, how deep does this go? And I just devoured information. But I was also meditating twice a day at the time, and integrating and laying in the sun. And luckily I was on a solo holiday, so I had time to really be in it. But that was also scary, because it was my reality 24/7 was deconstructing my reality. And it was such a surreal, like Twilight Zone kind of feeling. And it can be very scary to go down that road, because you can't, like, I started feeling paranoid and really nervous, because you just, you're like, what do I trust if I can't even trust myself? And the feeling was I was duped my whole life. So who do I trust now? So, you know, what really helped was meditating and eating healthy, drinking clean water, making sure I was taking time to breathe and integrate. And also, while I was learning about the scary truths of the world, I was also devouring information about the beauty of the truth of who we are and our origins, and the fact that, you know, we've been led to believe we are finite beings, and in truth, we are eternal. And reading about Dolores Cannon's books, that the 3 Waves of Volunteers is a great book by her. And 30 years ago or 40 years ago, she was saying this time on Earth would come, and there are all these beings, like 3 waves of volunteers who came, which are us, to help and take part in the awakening and be the calm and anchor the light. So it gave me a sense of purpose. And like I said in the beginning, I was always searching for this reason I'm here. And I felt like I found it, because it is everyone's reason, whether you know it or not. You're here to be part of the awakening, and it has never happened before on this scale. And it's going to rock your whole world and change your whole life. And how magical is that once you start opening to information about the spiritual side? Yeah, so magic.
And isn't it stunning when you really contemplate what's happening? And we couldn't have ever called that it would happen like this, and I don't even know how I thought it was going to happen. And I used to on and off, I still do, but I used to before really listen to a lot of Dolores Cannon's lectures, and I just loved what she was saying.
Yeah.
And I think partly there was this thing where we thought it was all going to happen in December 2021, sorry.
Yep.
And I actually went round to my friend's house. I remember going around there going, well, if it's going to happen, at least we're together. It's like one of the like at the time, the only other person who was aware that there was like any significance to this date. So we really didn't know what was going to happen. Like we were going to have like two kind of splitting globes going off, or we had no clue, And then we kind of sat around the day and went, oh, okay. All right, then I'll just go home,
Yeah.
But then still being aware of that at some time this would come, because it's written in so many different books, modalities, Bibles, religions, whichever way you want to look at it, is there is always talk of this time, the shifting of ages. And others will interpret it and call it different things, but this has always been written and always been expected. We just didn't know what it was going to look like, and I think we're kind of, and I change every day, because I'm when I'm contemplating what it is and what it looks like, is how is it actually really going to play out? Because what we're at the point now is just like the veil and the covers being pulled from everything, and we're really seeing who and what has been controlling us, and how much power and authority we've given out to external things, and now coming back to ourselves. And after a while, once you've seen it once, you can't not see it. You can see the game everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then it's like, okay, so when does it get to the point? What point are we at critical mass when things really flip over? Because we're not there yet. We're moving towards it. We're not there yet. What thoughts do you have on that? What do you think, if in your moments when you're thinking about it, how does it feel like, or what do you think it looks like, or what do you think it's going to move into?
Yeah, I think the splitting of the earths is very energetic. And even now you can see the split between those living in fear and those living, or at least trying to move towards trust. And for me, I've always felt like right now it feels like the momentum is accelerating around the world. Whether people are fully awake or aware of it or not, their intuition is coming online stronger. And at some level, even those who have not been aware for a long time have at least heard the narrative of the other side, or they're at least open to the idea that something fishy going on here. This is a little strange. Or, yeah, of course, the media is kind of exaggerating. Like, they know to some level. They just don't know the full level.
Right.
But I feel like the way we have been programmed, throughout all facets of society, those are the same methods being used now to awaken the masses and seed the consciousness. So even though, some of these theories are labeled as conspiracies, everyone, or I don't know, a huge percentage of the population have at least heard of them. They have a friend who said something, even though they don't believe it yet. I feel like a lot more people are starting to question or starting to open, and it's happening so subtly that that it's really sinking in to your consciousness, to the point where it's like Inception. At some point, you're going to think, you're going to just flip over and you're going to connect the dots. And maybe you'll start thinking you arrived at it on your own. But I feel the shifts happening through extended family and just conversations I'm seeing online. And I think we're really close to the tipping point. And once we do get there, it's just going to flood really, really fast.
Yeah.
I can't wait. But I also know that, I guess waiting for it is also prolonging it. And we get to create the world we want now. And that's the lesson we're all learning of patience, but it's taking a long time.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if you were over the past year in particular when the alternative scene really exploded online. That at one point and it was more to do, I think, really with kind of like political events that seemed to be driving a lot of what was happening. There was so much going on with this is going to happen at that date, that's going to turn up, this is going to happen, all this kind of stuff, and it was just kind of dragging people along in this like expectation of, okay, it's going to happen now, it didn't happen, oh well, it's not going to happen, and that didn't happen, and then it kept going on and kept going on, and it became really exhausting, to a point where then people just had to really pull back and also retreat in. And it's not to kind of lay any blame on any of those people that were broadcasting those dates, because I think they did a service in their own way. So time will tell who's who, because we know there's infiltration on every level, on every side at the moment. So you always have to kind of like pull it back to your own self, and also really listen to what people are saying, and be, and watch it, feel them and watch them, and don't just kind of like blindly take one nugget of information and build a reality around that, which is kind of the way that we've been told to do. It's coming away from time, letting things happen when they do, and knowing that it's all going to be right when it's right, and not beating up anyone about, not beating anyone over the head with a stick for them getting times wrong, because they served a purpose in particular, diverting that real wave of people who awoke last year in particular away from the mainstream and into a different narrative, and got them to start hearing different things and questioning different things and directing them into different ways of thinking, and showing them the behind the scenes, and showing them what the media was not telling them, and what the media stood for, and what they were being. So it was just kind of like almost like a training wheel of taking people away from mainstream programming and just getting them to sit in a space where they still needed to be entertained, but kind of just gently moving them away from that kind of the because the fear level was and is, I suppose, still amped up. And with the way that this narrative in particular with regards to the health issue that we've been quote unquote battling for so long, if it wasn't so evil, it would be genius, because they've managed to like maintain, how many days are we at now, 400 and something days of like complete lies day in day out, and kept the level, like the fear level, really high. I've never seen a narrative run so long. It's as somebody who writes, and I'm sure you as a creator will understand, sometimes you need a moment to kind of regroup and like kind of work out where the plot line's going. But
it's a long movie. But actually they've been doing it our whole lives, and this shows how much they were able to program us and keep us in a whole different false reality that you can't even see it happening.
And especially when you look at, in particular, let's say the characters that have been created, and once I kind of really looked at especially the entertainment industry, I spent a lot of energy trying to enter into myself. And then after a while you kind of look at something and go, okay, I was spared, but at the time you're like, why can't I get it? Why won't anybody listen to my music? Why, but you look at it and go, well, there was a reason, because I've seen people that I knew from childhood, from my hometown, who had a quote unquote successful life or career in those industries, within the sporting industry, within the entertainment and music industry. And I just had to kind of watch from afar and go like, okay, so maybe it's like, you know, and asking and kind of being down on yourself as to why it's not happening for you. And then when the propaganda came out, they were there front and center pushing the thing out. And it was just like, wow, you know, for all that I wanted and all that I thought I desired, that, you know, that would have been what it would have cost me. Just to have to stand up in front of a camera. And I don't know, maybe they truly 100% honestly believe that what they're telling people to do with their bodies is right and fair and for the good of mankind. I don't know, but I know too much to know that I couldn't do that. I'm glad that I don't feel that I'm put in a position that I have no choice but to do that. That I'm so controlled that that is what I would do. It's been an interesting turn of events where you're just like, oh wow, okay, that's why it didn't
all
work
makes
out.
sense.
Yeah.
I guess people don't realize, just as the media is controlled and it's using propaganda, so is the entertainment industry, and it's literally everywhere around us, but we can't see that. We think, oh, I'm thinking for myself because I'm making my own smart decisions, but the same narrative is being pushed from every aspect. I'm sure even the popular books, like I'm starting to see programming in very famous authors in their thriller and sci-fi books. So it's the same as the movies. And you're like, how deep does it go?
Well, this is always what I'm trying to find. It's like how far back, when does this start? What is our true history? And even looking at things like taking into account technology, how far advanced is technology, or has technology always been, where we've assumed that we're a primitive kind of race just putting it together, and slowly finally we've got iPhones and smart TVs and Siri and Alexa, and that's all great, but we've had far more advanced technologies previously that have been, that at some point there was a point in time where a civilization was stopped. And this again is a new exploration for me, to see that they got to a certain point where it was almost like an erasure of generations of of time, but there are still clues available for us, and there are still clues if we look and just feel into. There are buildings, there are ruins and fossils and things in the earth that still have the clues there if we look and stop looking at
the pyramids.
When we go, well, how is it possible for those things to be created at that time, when apparently all they had were, like, you know, sticks and stones and mules? So
it's so crazy. Once you wake up, you see how much you just took for granted without questioning because you were told in a book. But oh my gosh, like, I'm so excited about learning about our ancient history and the actual ancient civilizations and our technologies that we had. And I mean, now we have, well, I've heard the actual technology that exists is hundreds of years ahead of our time, but I think it's even more than that. And all these suppressed patents, even healing technologies, med beds, it's going to just blow our minds. And I think first it will bring up a lot of anger too, because of all the people who could have been cured. But also realizing, wow, this is the level of life that we always had at our fingertips and we never knew. It's just insane to me. And finally learning that technology, like the highest technology, is actually our own energy and our own spirituality and our ability to manifest instantly and create. Like, playing with that's going to be crazy too.
And it's just getting our mind out the way, the limit that we have on our mind, that makes us believe that we don't have it. It's far-fetched, it's science fiction, when it's like you say, it's the reality of what we're able to do. And the fact that we are creators and we create from our minds is why it is so imperative for those who want to keep us captive to keep telling us a version of events, because we create from that version. And if that came out of, if for one glorious day there would be no, the phone wouldn't work and the TV wouldn't work and the internet wouldn't work, and there would be nothing that we could connect with to get any information. And we just kind of had that for a while, maybe a day or a week or however long it would take us to reset our minds. When we're just relying on what we see around us and the people that are around us, to where would we go without that interference? Because that constant interference is, like you say, just feeding us on a drip level every single day to create a prison for ourselves, basically, based on what we're being told about who we are and what we can do. And talking about creation, because that's what you are, tell us about your book and your artistry, because I love the title, Awakening the Heart of Humanity. What inspired you to get started on a book and present it to the world?
Yeah, this book was completely channeled for these times. And I've always wanted to write a book, but whenever I tried to write from the mind, it wouldn't really flow. And I was thinking too much about what the audience would want and how to help, make sure it's actionable and all this. But the book that came through was actually the one that I wanted to birth for myself. Like, how do I pour all this love and energy and excitement for this unprecedented time we are in right now into something physical? Like, it's an expression of my soul. And what came through was a book with words and artwork to help people to remember their soul and the reason why they were born, and to come back to our own magic. So yeah, I wrote it last year, a lot of it during lockdown, and a lot of the paintings were done in the past year as well. And just put it out from the heart. And that's why it's really resonating with people, because the responses I get is like, it feels like it was written about my life, and it's like the words my soul wants to tell me. And it resonates at a deep level and brings people to tears. That's just so magical.
It's like every word that you post on your memes, I'm like, I should share other things as well, because there's like, I always just read them and just be like, well, where's the lie? There isn't, it's so true. It's so honest. It's so observant and clear. And these are the things that just draw you in. And that's why I thought I need to speak to her, because I just really just hear all of what you're writing, and to also see people creating in this period of time as well, and putting things out into the world that that it's not that you don't care about the reception, more you're aware that you want people to be able to receive it, but also it's like you need to make sure that you're congruent with your own heart first. That's what I feel when I look at it. And I'm just like, and when you come from that point, I think it just has a wider reach. We've spent so long censoring and clipping ourselves and wondering about what this person's going to think and what that person's going to think. And part of that as well is, if you think about who's in your circle that's like maybe openly or not so openly judging you.
Oh, absolutely.
And whether and especially if they're not necessarily even directly saying it to you, they are energetically holding a barrier around you. And when you're able to fully step into yourself and just be all of you, like you say, people like that will fall away. And then you'll realize that having that person in your life or in your energy was actually holding you back. Because you were, there's always this like, what will so and so say, even if half of the time you don't even really care that much, you think, but yet there's an element of you that holds yourself in a bizarre stance of restriction, whereas when you have the right people around you, you can't but fly, and they want that for you. They want you to be the best version of yourself. They don't feel intimidated by that. If anything, they feel inspired by that, to see you flourish and to have been part of your journey. And just I wanted to touch on, you say you found your relationship with Joel. Can you see how different it is now that you're on this side of your awakening as opposed to where you would have been, the person that you were when you were working in Silicon Valley?
Oh my gosh, we wouldn't have even gotten together, probably. I was so different. But also, he's been on his spiritual journey in his own way, more through a journey with depression and then finding his own freedom within himself. But together we went through, well, I went through the outer awakening and then helped him through his, but he's shown me so much about the world and the inner peace we can also create within. So having someone like that it just feels like you can just share what we're going through, and our energy is just so aligned, and we're such mirrors for each other. So it's been my rock, and I don't think I could have done it without him. So it's been such a beautiful journey. And yeah, we have, I guess everything happens in perfect timing, because I know we have a close friend who's searching for the one and ready for it, after doing all her inner work. But I'm telling her, like, the person you would have met even a year ago would not be a match to who you are now. You've shifted so much. So just trust the timing of your life, and trust that everyone and everything comes in for the perfect, reason and in perfect timing.
Yeah. And how would you, if you were to put words to what that relationship let's call it a 5D relationship, because I can't think of a better way of describing it.
Yeah.
What that feels like in comparison to the way that we're conditioned into relationships, and this kind of,
my gosh.
I do this workout on, like, I like to do like little workouts in the morning to get my energy up. And there's a really great woman on YouTube. She does some amazing workouts. I really like her workouts. I really don't like her music, simply because the relationships that, the love stories that always get sung about in pop songs are so toxic. It's like, I'm waiting for you, but you don't like me. And it's like what this woman is singing. I'm like, it's just a shame. It's such a shame that this music is so bad, because her workouts are so good. And she's a lovely person. But when you hear, like you say, the programming through music and the expectation and the market that this is going to, those like young women in their late teens going into like their early 20s and even through to their 30s, and if they're listening to this music and this is their expectation of what a relationship is, no wonder you have so much problem, because this is what you're around to. But you've found something different. How would you kind of just say that? Where were you in, what space were you in that brought him to you?
Yeah, I love this story. I was really working on my own self-love at the time, actually. It was a huge theme in my life. I feel like I've always been kind of wanting to find the one, even in Silicon Valley. I was saying, okay, I'm ready. But it was more of, I was trying to grasp it to fulfill a need in me, or, fulfill this void. But everything shifted after my kind of awakening, where I was just high on life in Bali. I was loving just every aspect of my life. I was really working on my healing journey. I worked on healing a lot of my childhood traumas and inner child work. And I was actually feeling more at peace with myself, and just, in this place of, of course, I want my life partner, but for the first time, I felt ready for it in a different way. It wasn't a desperate needing. It was more of, I'm feeling so full in myself and I don't need anyone, but I'm ready for it now. And actually, when I said that to myself, I think it was a week or so later that I actually met him. And it just blows my mind, because I had cleared a lot of my final fears around relationship and long-term commitment. And in doing that, I could see how much shifting my inner being and clearing my own fears and my own childhood wounds helped me just magnetize that timeline. It was always available, but I wasn't ready, or I hadn't gone through the journey I needed to get to be ready until then. And the magical thing is, of course, you attract someone who is a mirror for you. So the amount of love I was showing myself, he mirrored that in me. And of course, we had it's normal to have some ups and downs, but for me, it was the most harmonious and easeful coming together. There were no games, no drama, no push and pull. It was just an energetic resonance and beautiful soul connection. And I've never experienced that before. So yeah, it's very beautiful the way it unfolded.
That's so great. And these are the words that when I listen into other people talking about these more conscious relationships, it's about recognizing where it's not, it's not the other person, or it's rarely the other person. It's your reaction to what you think's going on. And it's always this assumption that we make, and this, like say, this grabbing and this kind of box ticking that, okay, the job, the car, the marriage, and that doesn't come from a space of clearing all the stuff up that we need to clear to like be the best version of ourselves. And even when we're in a situation where we're triggered by somebody else's actions or behaviors, we've got to kind of see it from their point of view, as opposed to, this reminds me of so and so who did that to me that year, and that means and all these kind of things that we tell ourselves to get ourselves in this perpetual wheel of mess, when if we just recognize that we're all works in progress, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm still working on clearing, because that's my next thing, but enjoying where I'm at, seeing the growth, and then just also seeing how other things are maneuvering in place, in just a real kind of ease-filled way. And knowing that in the same way that it's happened for others that I've seen around me, that when it's right, it's going to be right, So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
that's
beautiful.
a trust.
Yep.
So perfect. But before you go, let me just ask you a couple of questions, and then we can find out where you are. So I would ask you, what tools would you say have assisted you in your awakening, and what would you be able to share for others that would assist them in their awakening?
Yeah, there's so many books and YouTube channels and Instagram accounts, but I feel like the biggest tool of all is your own intuition. And everyone's going to awaken in their own way. Like, some people are more spiritually minded, so what you're drawn to is going to be different. But follow your intuition and set the intention, like, I'm open to learning, like, show me the way. And when you feel guided, or when you feel kind of pulled or interested in a certain person who's online or sharing information, just tune into that. And that's how I awakened, like, following one curiosity after another. And so I don't know if I can give exact, like, oh, you should read this book, because it's going to resonate with people differently. But we've been taught to kind of trust everything outside of us. And I feel like the greatest lesson is to actually begin to listen to our own gut and learn what that feels like.
That's probably the best one, and the hardest one initially as well.
Yes.
Yeah. As well. But then the one that will see you at every moment, will see you well, even if you don't always like what comes up initially as well. So, and that's one thing I'd say for my own self, where I've had to just listen a little bit more to, or just trust a little bit more, because sometimes I'll be in a situation where I'll meet someone and I almost get told their situation, and it's not necessarily that they're a bad person. I just kind of it gets laid out to me what to expect. And you always want to think the best of a situation, and sometimes it doesn't always work like that, and you could have saved time and everything like that. But intuition I've worked just never does you wrong, and questioning is one of my favorite ones as well. It's just, okay, what's going on here? You know, instead of
what's the real story?
What is it really happening? And what would you say are your favorite self-care rituals and practices?
Recently I've been doing cacao ceremonies with some really good girlfriends, and sometimes we do Zoom calls. But what we do is we sit down with cacao, and it doesn't have to be cacao, it can be tea or whatever. But setting an intention to just drop in and be together and meditate together is so powerful. And what I do is I like to go through reflecting on what I want to let go of the past month, what I want to call in. And it's more of a feeling or a way of being I want to call in. Sometimes asking myself or my higher self, what is blocking me right now? And in the end, what we do is we set an intention for the world, or we send our love to the whole world, and we visualize this love encompassing the whole world and imagining the world where everyone is free and awakened and living in love and joy and health and all that. So it's so powerful. And I really feel a shift even weeks after each one. And sometimes we do it, once a month or twice a month, but you can do it alone, you can do it in a group. And I've done it also with my partner, and it's a good way to drop in and be present with each other and, just share what's on our heart and what we want to also create intentionally together. So it's super nourishing.
Wow, sounds great. Sounds like an idea. Yeah, it's a fun thing to do. Like-minded people. Perfect. Thank you. So, Ashmi, before you go, can you just share what's coming up for you now? Tell us, what work you're doing. Tell us more about your book and where people can actually connect and get a copy.
Yeah. So funnily, right now, I am just being and unlearning the whole hustle programming. My book is, still available, and I guess that's my main focus, but it's not like the 3D way of, I need to promote it or something. It's just flying to the right people and the people who want to call it. So I share my writing daily on Instagram at Ashmi _path or ashmi.path. Living in Australia, I have to learn the lingo here. But and then my book is available on my website, which you can find on my Instagram, or Ashmi ASHMI PATH or HELA.com. It's just being and living, and we just moved to a little cabin on 55 acres of land, so we're just being in nature and connecting with our hearts. And that's what's really making my writing flow lately, and I feel a lot more clear. So that's my favorite way to connect, just through Instagram.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this conversation and sharing your story, because it's so inspiring that you just followed through. And I really think that versions of your story are going to be coming in their hundreds of thousands, as so many people really kind of wake up to the fact that there's something more that they can have, and there's something more that they can be. And everyone has something to contribute and give into the world to assist those who are just waking up, who just want to kind of hear someone else's story and someone else's truth, because when you're looking at it, it's like, oh, it sounds like me, which just shows you that truth is truth. It's just universal. It is what it is, even if we've all got very different backgrounds. Like I said, when I wrote the words, I could have written every one from my point of view, because it's like, I agree with what you're saying. Because it's a universal truth, and I think it's amazing what you've done. So thank you for being part of this conversation. I really enjoy it, and I know that other people will, because it's you're perfection. It's, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
Perfect
so
example of someone who's just really awakened
I'm still on my way.
I know, but especially coming like ironically from Silicon Valley and tech, especially
Yeah.
in this day and age. So it's great.
No, it was super fun, Carol. Thank you so much. And you're doing such a beautiful job just sharing your light with the world. And it's amazing how we can connect from around the world and know that there are other light warriors doing the same. All we have to do is just be ourselves and anchor the calm and spread our love and help people when they ask for it. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Ashmi, and thank you for listening. You can find out more about me on my website, which is carolmaewhittic.com. You can follow me on Facebook under the same name, and on Instagram I am Kazmic, that's CAZMICK. So until the next week, enjoy this time, enjoy your awakening. See you soon.